Hello everyone, if you're new here, welcome. My name is Keisha and today I'm going to be doing the mid-year book freakout tag. This is always one of my favorite videos to film every year because it's a little bit of a midway check-in just to see how my reading is going this year. So I did set a Goodreads goal at the beginning of the year to read 50 books. I always really aim to read 100 books a year, but I always set it at 50 and then move it up in quarters as I exceed the goal because it just makes me feel a lot better when I exceed the goal versus if I don't end up reading 100 books. So far this year, I have completed 52 books and I'm very satisfied with that number. I have moved it up to 75 now. So that is my Goodreads goal. Hopefully I'll get to 100, but if I don't, that's okay. I do tend to slow down with my reading a little bit at some points of the year. So we'll just see where I'm at by the end of the year, but right now I'm satisfied with the 52. For those of you who may not be familiar with the mid-year book freakout tag, I will go ahead and leave the original creators link down below in the description box, but this is basically just a list of 13 questions that function as kind of a mid-year check-in for where everyone's at in their reading. So this is going to be my answers to the 13 questions. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and get started. I've got all of my books sitting in front of me here. So question number 1 is, what is the best book that you've read so far this year? I'm curious if any of you guys have any guesses as to what my favorite book that I've read so far this year is. So if you want to guess, I would love to know what you think my favorite is so far. If you want to comment down below before you hear what it is. So pause the video and comment if you have a guess. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and tell you what it was. So it may come as no surprise to you that this book is by my favorite author, and that is The Things We Keep by Sally Hepworth. This book really took me by surprise. It is one of Sally's backlist books that is further back in her backlist. I believe, let's see, when did this book come out? I don't want to say wrong. 2015. So it's a few years older, and this one follows our main character. Her name is Anna Forster, and she is only 38 years old when she finds out that she has been diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. So she is then submitted to this assisted living facility, and she ends up meeting this boy there named Luke, and he's around the same age as her, and Luke suffers from the same type of dementia that Bruce Willis has, if you're familiar with his case, and it's frontotemporal, I believe is what it's called, and instead of losing your memories, you start to lose your words, like you can't speak anymore, and you deteriorate that way. So they end up kind of sparking a little bit of a romance, but their families choose to keep them apart. But there is a woman that works here, her name is Eve Bennett, and she's the new cook, and she sees this spark and this hope and this love that these two have, and so she does everything in her power to keep them together. Eve has a point of view in this book, as well as Anna having a point of view, and then you also get the point of view from Clementine, who is Eve's daughter, which is so precious. I love that so much. I love this book so much. It definitely takes a toll on you emotionally, especially if you have loved ones who are suffering or have suffered with Alzheimer's, or if you were just simply kind of like fearful of that happening to you. I think either way you can empathize with the story. It is such a good one. I love Sally Hepworth's characters. She honestly, I don't think she's ever written a bad character or one that I didn't love, and she just does it so well and weaves the story so well. This is just probably my favorite book of hers right now. I do love The Good Sister, but this one just holds a very special place in my heart. Question number 2 is, what is the best sequel that you've read so far this year? And I've read a couple of sequels, but I feel like this one has to take the cake. So this was the first year that I got into the ACOTAR series. So my favorite sequel that I've read so far this year is A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. This is also going to be probably my favorite book in that series so far. I haven't yet read the final book in the series, so I don't know, that one could win out over this one. But so far, A Court of Mist and Fury is my favorite. This is where we get a little bit more of Rhysand and the Night Court and the Inner Circle and so many good things. This one does have a little bit of, well, not a little bit, it has a lot of bit of steamy scenes in it, and it's not my normal read. But there's just something gripping about Sarah J. Maas's writing in this series. I feel like most people are familiar with it, so I'm not going to go into much detail. But if you're not familiar and you haven't read a lot of fantasy, or maybe you have, but you're just like not as familiar with the books, I highly recommend checking them out because as a non-fantasy reader, I really loved this. Question number 3 is, what is a new release that you haven't read yet but you want to? And I have 4 books for this. I'm not going to go super in depth with any of them. I'll just be like a general synopsis. But the first one is Murder Off the Books by Tamara Berry. This just came out in May, and I'm very excited to read this. This is book 3 in the By the Book Cozy Mystery series. This is my favorite cozy mystery series. It is set in Washington. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but this is what it looks like in this city, and I absolutely love it. Definitely want to visit there someday. But it's kind of like a little western town, and you have our main character Tess, who is a thriller writer who has kind of taken a break, or she's trying to get back into writing. She's gone through a divorce recently, so her and her daughter Gertie go to her grandfather's cabin, which he left to her in his will, and murder ensues from there. That's all I'll say. This is my favorite cozy mystery series, so I'm very excited to continue on with book 3. Another one that I'm really looking forward to is Do I Know You by Emily Wibberley and Austin Sigmund Broca. These are the authors that wrote The Roughest Draft, which I have not read yet, but I'm really interested in this book, and honestly because it reminds me a little bit of After I Do by Taylor Jenkins Reid. It says, when a couple starts to feel like they're married to a stranger, a flirtatious game of pretend becomes the spark they need to reignite their relationship. So you have Eliza and Graham, and they're going off on this vacation, and they've kind of lost the spark in their marriage a little bit. And when they're sitting at the bar, the bartender doesn't realize they're together, so he tries to introduce them to each other, and they end up having this kind of role-playing game where they're reigniting their love, and it just sounds super sweet. And I think it's really fun to read a book about a married couple and like reigniting love and stuff. I've been married for 10 years, and I just love reading books about married couples because I find it very interesting to just see that there's like hopefulness still in that, and that, you know, marriages can last and stuff like that. I just love those themes in books because you don't always see that. So I feel like that's very unique, and I'm really excited to read this one. Then I have a Courtney Walsh book. This one is My Phony Valentine. I did go ahead and start reading this one in February. I just haven't continued with it yet, and I want to start over because I love Courtney Walsh's writing. She writes really sweet, like great banter, clean romances. So definitely check her out if you're interested. But this is a sports romance. You have a hockey player and a baker, and I don't know much more than that, but I'm very excited to get back into Courtney Walsh's writing because she's probably gonna end up being my favorite romance like author, but I just don't know yet because I've only read one of her books so far. And the final book that I have that I really want to get to that's a new release, and I'm forgetting to tell you guys when these come out, or when they came out, but I mean it was this year. That's all you need to know. The Soulmate by Sally Hepworth. I believe this one came out in April, and obviously Sally's my favorite author. I just haven't gotten around to this one yet, but it follows Gabe and Pippa, I think is the wife's name. Yeah, Gabe and Pippa, and they live at this cliff's edge in Australia where people tend to go to end their lives, but Gabe has always been really successful in talking people off the ledge until the one time he's not. That's kind of the story this follows, and I've heard that this is Sally's most thrillery book yet, so I'm really excited to check this one out. Question number 4 is, what is your most anticipated release for the second half of the year? I also have 4 answers for this one because it's really hard to choose. I do think my top answer is going to be The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston, which comes out June 27th, so not too much longer now. And this book, if I'm remembering correctly, follows this woman who moves into this apartment, and she finds that there's this other man there, but he lived there like 7 years ago, so this is kind of like the ghost of him or something like that. Like there's a romance that ensues, I think, but it's kind of a weird situation where he's no longer there. I can't remember if he like died or if this is just like a weird timeline swap over thing. I'm not really sure. But I loved The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston, so I'm very excited to read her new release. Then another book that I'm really excited for is another romance book. It's called You with a View by Jessica Joyce, and it comes out on July 11th. I don't know a lot about this book either, and I forgot to write down what it was about. If I'm remembering correctly, it is following this like boy and girl who, I think their grandparents had a love story, and they go on this road trip together, but the guy and girl don't really like each other, so I think it's like either an enemies to lovers or a grumpy sunshine type romance. But they go on this road trip with the guy's grandfather who used to be in love with the girl's grandmother, and just kind of like live out their love story. And the cover of this is honestly what drew me in, but I feel like this could be a really sweet story, and I love a good road trip romance, so I'm definitely excited for that one. Then I have 2 spooky middle grade books that I'm really excited for. The first one is The Bellwoods Game, and I can't remember the author's name, but I'm gonna pop a picture up on the screen. I definitely didn't do a great job of taking notes for this, but this one comes out on, I believe it's July 18th, which is a lot sooner than I thought. This is like supposed to be for fans of like Small Spaces, which is one of my favorite spooky middle grade books, and I'm very excited for this one to come out soon. Then we also have The Night Housekeeper by Laura Senf. This is the follow-up to The Clackety, which I absolutely loved. This is the second book in the Blight Harbor series, and it comes out on October 17th. I'm not really sure what we're going to get up to with this one. I've kind of gone into this one a little bit more blind, but I know we're going to follow Evie again, and she is one of my favorite characters, so I'm really excited to jump back into the world with Evie. Question number 5 is, what is your biggest disappointment so far? And I think that The Couple at Number 9 by Claire Douglas has to take the cake. I was so hyped up for this book. I'd not really heard a lot of people talk about it, but the back of the book was such a good synopsis. You've got the victims. When Saffron Cutler moves into Nine Skeleton Place with her boyfriend Tom and sets about with renovations, the last thing she expects is builders uncovering human remains, the remains of 2 bodies, in fact. Then you have the investigation. They're going to have to go back and talk to Rose's grandmother because they found these bodies and they've been there for at least 30 years, so they need to talk to the person who owned the cottage before Rose, Saffy's grandmother. But Rose is in a nursing home and she has Alzheimer's, so does she really remember what happened? Then you have the killer. Somebody's stalking the house now, so they're wondering if they're in danger, and that's basically the setup of the story. So I was very intrigued by this one, but it ended up being a really, really slow story. I didn't love the whole ride of the story. I was really struggling not to DNF it. I didn't think I would DNF it, but I ended up not finishing it at 70-ish%, 75%. And I was buddy reading this with my friend Rachel from Happy Go Lovely Sleeves, and ended up just telling her to tell me what the twists were, which they were good, but I think if you like some of Lisa Jewell and Ruth Ware's writing and the slower paced English or British suspense thrillers, maybe you'll like this one, but this was just way too slow and boring for my taste. Next up is the biggest surprise of the year so far, and I have 2 books for this because I feel like both of these were a big surprise for me. The first one is, you probably guessed it, Verity by Colleen Hoover. This book is very well known and either well loved or well hated, and I didn't really know which side of this I was going to fall on, but I ended up, it's hard to say this because I enjoyed reading this story. It is very fast paced. The writing, I have a word for it, I'm not going to say it. It's not my favorite writing, but it's still gripping, if that makes sense. And I don't know, I flew through this. Was it messy? Yes. Is it toxic? Yes. Is it problematic? Yes. Is it a little trashy? Well, it's a lot of trashy. If you know about the headboards, you know. But this literally just took me for such a wild ride, and I actually enjoyed it. So I ended up giving this 5 stars. I would definitely say this is probably one of my biggest surprises. But another big surprise for me is how much I actually ended up enjoying ACOTAR. I love this series. I'm a fan. I'm a huge fan. I can't wait to read the last book in the series. The reason why I haven't yet is because I want to wait on the graphic audio, which now part 2 doesn't release until the end of September. So it's going to be a while, but I really loved the first book and the second book and the third book, and I'm ready to read the 4th one. I love this series so much. Like I said, if you haven't really read fantasy before, or if you have, but you just haven't been interested in reading a fae fantasy, just give it a try. It's so good. Her writing is so good, and definitely listen to the graphic audiobooks if you get a chance. Question number 7 is your favorite new to you or debut author. So my new favorite author has got to be Tamara Berry. You guys, this is the one I mentioned earlier, the By the Book mystery series. It's a cozy mystery, and Buried in a Good Book is my favorite cozy mystery of all time right now. There's so much wit and banter and great writing. The first line of this book, let me just go ahead and tell you what it is. The first line says, there are at least 3 dead bodies in there. She has great first lines, great hooks to get you into her books. That rhymed, that was funny. Anyways, I love this. Again, it follows Tess Harrow. She's a thriller writer, and her daughter Gertie have gone to her grandfather's cabin in the woods. And does this tell where it takes place? It doesn't. It's in Washington, and I really want to tell you guys. I know I popped it up earlier on the screen, but it bugs me that I can't remember. I just want to go there. But anyways, I love the banter between the detective in the story and the sleuth in the story, and there is like potential for a budding romance there. And I love the setting. There's like Bigfoot sightings in this book. There are disembodied body parts. Is that right? I don't know. There's an arm that falls out of the sky with fish and some other things, but I just think this is so well done. I also would like to say if you like Finley Donovan, you might like this because it's similar to me, but I also don't want to put that name on there if you love Finley Donovan and then you're disappointed by this, but I like this more than Finley Donovan. I actually decided not to continue with that series because I liked it, but I didn't like it enough to continue, and I love this one enough to continue. So I read the first 2 books and I can't wait to get to the 3rd one, but Tamara Berry is definitely a new favorite author of mine. Question number 8 is, who is your newest fictional crush? I have a few. So one is Rhysand from the ACOTAR series. If you know, you know. Another one would be Hank from Just Another Love Song by Carrie Winfrey. I'll talk about this a little bit more later, but this is the epitome of my hometown and a hometown good old boy, and I love Hank. So definitely Hank. And then also 2 Sams, okay? You got Sam from Every Summer After and Sam from One True Loves. I love both of these Sams. They are just the sweetest, gushiest guys. So I'm not going to go in detail about my thoughts on why or anything else. If you've read the books, you know. If you haven't, you just got to read the books. Question number 9 is, who is your newest favorite character? And I have 2. First is Feyre from the ACOTAR series because she is such a strong female lead, and she's been through it, but she comes out better for it on the other side, and I just love it. I just love her. Oh my goodness. If you know, you know. And also Tess Harrow, the sleuth in the Buried in a Good Book mystery series by Tamara Berry. Those are my 2 favorite characters right now, and probably 2 of my favorite characters of all time. Question number 10 is a book that made you cry. And it's on the bottom of the stack, so I'm not going to pull it out, but I'm going to say The Things We Keep by Sally Hepworth. That one, out of all the books that I've read so far this year, made me sob the most. Question number 11 is a book that made you happy, and I have 2 for that. So one book that really makes me happy that I'll talk a little bit more about now is going to be Just Another Love Song by Carrie Winfrey. Like I mentioned earlier, this is one that just feels like home to me. This is set in a small town. It is a small town romance, but essentially the blurb tells it all. It says 2 high school sweethearts get a second chance at their perfect ending, and it's basically the story of Sandy and Hank, and they were high school sweethearts, but then Hank went off to pursue his dream of being a country music singer, and Sandy was going to go to school to become an artist, but she ended up staying back in her hometown, and so their lives just ended up looking different. And then Hank comes back to town with a son in tow. So you've got the single dad trope, second chance romance, all the fun things. And the town here and the vibes and everything just really remind me of where I grew up. So I love it so much. I felt like there were so many relatable things. There were mentions of songs from my childhood that I absolutely loved. So there was just so much of this that felt comfortable and like home to me and just genuinely made me happy. And then the other book that I want to mention is, for the 50,000th time probably in this video, Buried in a Good Book. This book just made me laugh and smile so much. It's really, I know it's a murder mystery, but it's like a cozy murder mystery, and it just makes me feel so happy. Her writing, her stories, her characters just make me feel good inside. Question number 12 is, what is the most beautiful book that you've received or bought so far this year? So recently, the publisher sent me this cute little middle grade fantasy book that's coming out soon, and it is called Greenwild, Step into the Adventure of a Lifetime. Well, I think that's just the blurb, but Greenwild by Perry Thompson. This was sent to me by, I'm trying to figure out the publisher. It's FSG or something, but I'm not sure. Farrar, Straus, and Giroux, which I believe is part of Macmillan's Children's Publishing. They sent, there was a little sucker that came with it, and some stickers and an author's note. And this book, you guys, is absolutely stunning. I'm not really 100% sure what it's about. The book releases in, well, it says 2023, so I guess I don't know when it releases. Oh my goodness. I think it's next month or later this month, but I did get this early. I'm doing a great job. It's fine. It says Daisy Thistledown is on the run. Her mother has been keeping big glittering secrets, and now she has vanished. 11-year-old Daisy knows it's up to her to find Mom, but she's being hunted by someone determined to stop her from discovering the truth. The chase will lead her through a hidden doorway into another world, a place that's bursting with magic and enchantment. This is the Greenwild, full of astonishing natural wonders. This land of green magic seems too strange to be real, but Daisy quickly realizes that it holds the key to finding her mother and that someone wants to destroy it. Daisy must band together with a botanical genius, a boy who can talk with animals, and a cat with an attitude to uncover the truth about who she really is. Only then can she channel the power that will change the whole world and save the Greenwild itself. This unforgettable adventure is the first book in an extraordinary new series. So this book is absolutely stinking gorgeous. This is what it looks like on the outside. And then on the inside, you've got on both the front, what is this called? Like the spread, I don't know what it's called. You've got a map on the front and the back of it, but then also the hardcover has this beautiful bird with like this like leafy stuff around it. Wow, my English today is great. And then you've got Greenwild on the spine, but it's absolutely beautiful. I'm obsessed with it. So far this year, I would have to say that this is probably one of the most beautiful books that I've received. There are also really cute chapter headers in this one, and I believe there are also illustrations throughout. Let me see if I can find one. Oh, this is a great one. So there are illustrations throughout this as well. I'm really excited to check out this book. I just noticed there's a cat on the spine if you didn't catch that the first time. But yeah, this is definitely the most beautiful book I've gotten so far this year. The stack is getting really, really tall, so I'm not sure how many more books I can stack. Okay, the final question, question number 13, is what books do you need to read by the end of the year? So for this question, I decided to revert back to my 23 books for 2023 video that is basically just compiling a book of 23 books that I want to read this year. And I found out that so far this year, I've read 6 of the 23 books, which is honestly better than I thought, so that's good. But of those 23 books, I decided to pick some of these from that. And so the first one, and actually the one that everybody voted for me to read this year that I didn't read last year, or the year before that, or the year before that, is Nevermore by Jessica Townsend. This is the Trials of Morgan Crow. It is book 1 in a middle grade fantasy series that is reminiscent of Harry Potter and Alice in Wonderland. So I feel like most people generally know what this one's about. I haven't gotten to it yet, so I really need to get to it by the end of this year. And then I also picked out Bridge of Souls by Victoria Schwab. This is a spooky middle grade book. This is the 3rd book in the Cassidy Blake series, and I absolutely love it. It is the end of the series. She may do another arc eventually of it, like in arcs of 3. She's discussed possibly doing that before, but right now that's the end of it, and I've kind of been putting this one off, but I really need to get to it. I love this series. It's about this girl who can kind of see through the veil. She can see ghosts. She had this near-death experience, and now she's blessed with that gift. She also has a best friend named Jacob, who is a ghost, and she ends up traveling to the world's most haunted places with her parents because they are ghost hunters, but they don't know that Cassidy can see ghosts, and they can't see ghosts themselves. So it's a really interesting book. I love the history behind the different places that they go, so I definitely need to finish that one up. Then I also have Maybe in Another Life by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I just recently read One True Loves, and I've also read After I Do and The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I really love Taylor Jenkins Reid's backlist, so this is another one that I just really need to get to. I think it is a situation where there's a woman at a bar and she's choosing to leave the bar with her friend or to leave the bar with a guy, and it shows the 2 different scenarios of what her life would look like depending on the choice she made. So that sounds super interesting. Then I obviously want to get to Courtney Walsh's books. I already mentioned My Phony Valentine, but I also really want to read Merry Xmas. I feel like this is going to be a really good one. I loved Across Country Christmas, and like I said, she has the potential to be my new favorite romance author, especially with her having like clean, really sweet romances that also make me laugh. So I definitely want to get to Merry Xmas, and the last one is going to be The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker. In case you can't tell, I'm kind of in a romance mood. This one is one that I've just had my eye on probably since it came out, but I didn't own it until last year, and I really want to get to it. It's about this girl who, I think she goes to visit her dad in Alaska, and she meets a boy. I don't really know much about it, but I've heard that it's really good, so I definitely want to get to that book. Okay, and that is the end of all of the questions. So now you and I both are caught up on where I'm at with my reading this year. Like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I have read 52 books so far this year. Hopefully I will be able to make it to my 100 book reading goal, but if not, it's okay. If I make it to 75, I'll be good with that. But I'm very excited about the books that I've read so far this year. I really hope that you will check some of them out if you haven't read them, because they're my favorites for a reason. And then also, I'm really excited to read the books that I haven't yet gotten to. So you'll have to let me know what your favorite book that you've read so far this year is down in the comments. And if you made it this far in the video, go ahead and leave the book stack emoji, because this stack is really big. And that's usually the only emoji that I know to tell you guys to leave. So if you made it this far, just go ahead and leave the book stack emoji. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye, friends.